No one saw it coming. It was just another date on the calendar, a number that repeats itself every year without much fanfare. But something in the air of this time has become different. Something invisible, but intensely palpable, is changing. Those who still listen with their hearts feel it. There is a silent restlessness, a tension that grows day by day. It's not the kind of fear that is shouted. It's a whisper that penetrates deep within, as if the sky were holding its breath. June 25th, 2025 is no longer just any date. It's a line in time that could separate the Virgin's final warning from the beginning of a great fulfillment. And not everyone is ready for what may come. Sometimes warnings don't sound like thunder. They come like breezes, like glances that burn without words, like tears of a mother who no longer knows how to say that danger is near. This is how Medjugorje has spoken for more than 4 decades. Not with threats, but with pleas. Not with spectacles, but with maternal calls that, little by little, became lost in the rush of the modern world. However, everything changes when a date begins to weigh, and that weight is not only chronological, it is spiritual. It is as if time were narrowing, as if we were entering the final margin of a message that began in 1981 and has not yet been fully understood. That afternoon, more than 40 years ago, 6 young people were walking among stones and bushes in a small village in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Their lives were simple, ordinary, almost invisible to the world. But that day, something marked them forever. They say they saw a female figure clothed in light floating above the ground. Her face conveyed a perfect blend of tenderness and authority. She was crying, and with a voice louder than any cry in the world, she spoke words that have not been forgotten. Peace, peace, peace. Reconcile yourselves with God and with one another. From that moment on, Medjugorje ceased to be a village and became the epicenter of a series of messages that many say still descend from heaven today. The surprising thing is that unlike other apparitions, this one didn't end. Our Lady, known here as the Queen of Peace, has continued to appear to some of the visionaries daily for decades, more than 40 years of messages, calls, and instructions. And within that continuous flow, there are a series of secrets that have not been revealed to the world. 10 secrets, 10 warnings, 10 signs that, according to the visionaries, will be revealed by a chosen priest 3 days before their fulfillment. And when that happens, it will be impossible to ignore them. But what is so special about these secrets? Why have they been kept silent for so long? And why do so many souls believe that 2025 may mark the beginning of their revelation? Because something hung in the air from that first day. It wasn't just an apparition. It was a break in the history of the world, a pause that heaven imposed to speak, a last attempt at a warning before the human soul slipped definitively into the abyss. Medjugorje is not a tourist destination disguised as a shrine. It's an open wound through which God continues to speak to those who still have ears to hear. Whoever sets foot on that land says they'll never return the same. And it's not because of the beauty of the landscape, nor because of the bells ringing in the parish of St. James. It's something deeper, something unseen but that burns inside. There are those who claim that Medjugorje has a hidden spiritual code, as if each year, each message, each June 25th holds a greater meaning than it seems. For the most attentive, Our Lady has been revealing a path, 5 stones, like those David used to bring down Goliath, prayer from the heart, fasting, frequent Eucharist, monthly confession, and reading the Word. These are not new rules. They are ancient weapons, forgotten in the haste and pride of the modern world. And yet, as she herself said, it is with these weapons that the faithful will overcome the evil that looms over humanity. Not with power, not with noise, but with fidelity. But why, after so many years, does heaven continue to repeat the same message? The answer is not in Our Lady, but in us. Because the human heart has hardened, because humanity has not responded, Because while the message was tenderness, the reaction was indifference. While it was warning, it became mockery. While it was mercy, it was labeled fanaticism. And so, an idea has begun to resonate among those who study Marian apparitions. When the mother's love is no longer heard, the father's time will come. And that time, some say, is near. The visionaries never contradicted themselves. For more than 40 years they have affirmed the same thing. Our Lady entrusted them with 10 secrets, some personal, others for the world, but all, without exception, carry a prophetic weight that should not be taken lightly. One of those secrets is a permanent, visible, indestructible sign that will remain in Medjugorje. The visionaries say that, when it appears, it will be too late for easy conversion, because the sign is not meant to impress, but to confirm what has already been announced. It will be like the last echo of a voice that has spoken for decades, and that will never repeat its call again. One of the most moving moments in the history of Medjugorje was when Marian, one of the visionaries, explained that Our Lady would no longer appear to her every day, that their encounters would be only once a year, on March 18th. And not because she was less loved, but because the time of her preparation was over. That date, March 18th, was not chosen at random. It carries a weight that we still do not fully understand. And this has set off a silent alarm among the most attentive faithful. Are the messages entering their final phase? Will June 25th, 2025 mark the point where the warnings are transformed into fulfillment? In this context, it is not surprising that many have begun to observe signs in nature, in politics, in the church. Some claim that doctrinal confusion within the clergy itself was prophesied in the messages. That the loss of the sense of sin, the relativization of evil, and the exaltation of material things were warned of decades earlier. And while this was happening, the Queen of Peace pleaded for conversion, for reparation, for fasting. Not to punish, but to avoid punishment. But everything has a limit. Even mercy, when not accepted, turns into judgment. Not because God changes, but because man chooses silence instead of salvation. This June 25th, 2025 is not just another anniversary. It is a spiritual threshold, a line that might not be repeated. And so the soul that has felt even a whisper from heaven must wake up, because there is something in the atmosphere that is not normal, a tense weight, a calm before the storm. And it is not about fear, it is about preparation. Our Lady said it clearly. Do not wait for the day of revelation to convert, because then it will be too late. Prepare now. And how does one prepare a heart? Not with human strategies, not with restraint, but with prayer, with humility, with openness. Many wonder why the Church has not yet officially approved Medjugorje, and it's a valid question. But it's also true that the Vatican has authorized pilgrimages, sent pastoral delegates, and opened the doors to the sacraments there. It's as if, without giving a formal yes, the Church was saying, go, listen, convert. Perhaps heaven is acting with divine wisdom, waiting for the right moment to reveal what has yet to be revealed. Because faith is not imposed, it is proposed, it is sown, it is hoped for, and then it manifests itself powerfully when the time comes. And if that time is coming, how will we know it's real? Maybe we won't know for sure until we're inside. Maybe all we have now is this inner certainty, this sense of urgency that burns without explanation, like a fire that doesn't burn, but won't let us sleep, like an invisible gaze that follows us when we think we're alone, like a mother who still calls from the top of a hill, repeating words that can no longer be ignored. This world has no future without God. What if that future she speaks of begins to close in right now as you read these words? Meanwhile, souls sensitive to the breath of the Spirit begin to stir. Some return to the rosary, others return to confession after years. Families that were broken begin to pray together. Hearts hardened by pride kneel without fully understanding why. And so, in silence, the Virgin begins to gather her children like an unarmed but powerful army, because she knows what is coming. She knows that time is short. She knows the day will come, and she wants her children ready, not with fear, but with love. Not as slaves to judgment, but as witnesses of mercy. And in this second, in this breath, in this moment between what was said and what has yet to be revealed, the soul of the world holds its breath, as if it knows the prophetic clock is approaching its loudest chime. And that chime, for many, will come as a surprise. But for those who are attentive, it will be confirmation. Because it all began there, in that corner of Bosnia, and everything seems to want to return there, to the land where heaven spoke, to Medjugorje, where history has not yet ended, and the sign may be about to appear. Because in that land where it all began, not only words were heard, invisible processes were ignited that continue to shape destinies. Each message from the Virgin is like a seed thrown into the heart of the world, but not all germinate. Some fall on stones, others among thorns. Only a few find fertile ground, and those are the ones who, without fully understanding it, begin to awaken. And it is in that silent awakening that the destiny of many is at stake. Because what is at stake is not just a warning, it is the soul of the world. It is the spiritual balance of a humanity that has forgotten its origin and that walks, often unknowingly, toward a decisive hour. When one looks at the Medjugorje messages over the years, one realizes that there is an accelerating pace. At first, the words were maternal, almost tender. Pray, my children, convert. God loves you. But with the passage of time, the voice has become firmer, clearer, more urgent. The world is on the brink of great danger. You are in a time of grace. Seize it before it is too late. This is not a threat, it is the language of love that sees the abyss coming and cannot remain silent. It is the mother who cries out when she sees her child running toward the fire, because silence, at certain moments, can be an act of betrayal. And heaven does not betray. Heaven warns. Many have tried to discredit Medjugorje, some out of fear, others out of ideology, and many out of ignorance. But even among the most skeptical, there are those who recognize that something there cannot be explained by human logic alone. How is it possible that an apparition that has not ceased for more than 4 decades continues to produce profound conversions, religious vocations, and spiritual healings? How can we explain the peace that thousands of pilgrims claim to feel upon arrival? How can we ignore the lines for confession that last for hours, the faces weeping with emotion, the broken hearts that find meaning again? Something is happening. Something the world cannot control or manipulate, something that comes from on high. And that is precisely what makes June 25, 2025 different, because it is no longer just a matter of waiting for one more message. It is a matter of understanding that we are facing a date that could be a pivotal one. There are those who feel that one of the secrets is about to be fulfilled, that the warning long announced in other apparitions, like Garabandal, could be linked to Medjugorje, that a sign from heaven is approaching, that the veil that has covered the world's eyes for so long will begin to tear, not to frighten, but to reveal, to show that God has never stopped speaking. Only the noise of sin has made us deaf. And in that context, the Virgin's role is that of a mother preparing her children for a spiritual birth, not a gentle one, but a painful one. Because the world does not want to be born again, it clings to its darkness, but there is a small, faithful remnant that is willing. It is those hearts that the Virgin seeks, and that is why her messages have become more personal, more direct, more urgent. It is not enough to pray occasionally. It is not enough to listen without responding. We must live in grace. We must cut ourselves away from sin. We must watch like wise servants who await their Lord, because the hour is approaching, and there will be no human warning sufficient when the moment of divine manifestation arrives. The Medjugorje visionaries have said that before the events announced in the secrets occur, the world will experience an inner purification, a kind of sieve where each person must choose which side they want to be on. There will be no middle ground. There will be no spiritual neutrality. It will be like an early judgment where what is within each soul will be exposed, and that will be the real crisis. Not so much external events, but the inability of many to bear the truth about themselves. Because the great warning that so many speak of will not be a destruction, but an illumination, a moment when each conscience will see its true state before God, and that, in itself, will be an inner earthquake stronger than any natural catastrophe. Are we prepared for something like this? Are we ready to see ourselves without masks, without excuses, without justifications? Many believe they are fine just because they don't kill or steal, but lukewarmness is also sin. Indifference, selfishness, self-sufficiency, spiritual pride, all of this will also be revealed. And it will not be to condemn, but to offer one last chance for true conversion. But how many will take it? How many will recognize their fragility and throw themselves into the arms of mercy before the time of justice begins? In recent years, Our Lady has repeated a phrase that, at first glance, may seem gentle, but it hides an immense prophetic depth. I am with you. Spoken by a mother, these words are calming, but spoken by the Queen of Heaven at this time, they also sound like a shield, as if she knows that the days to come will demand special closeness, that there will be nights of spiritual darkness where only those who have learned to hear her voice will be able to stand, that there will be trials so strong that neither inherited faith nor empty religious practices will be able to sustain us. Only a living, intimate and firm relationship with God will be able to endure, and that's why she continues to appear, not out of habit, not for spectacle, but because heaven is at war for our souls. And that war is not fought with human weapons, but with prayers, with fasting, with humility, with forgiveness. It's a war won in secret, where no one applauds, but heaven watches. And every time a soul responds, even in silence, something moves in the invisible. Something tilts in favor of the world. Something delays judgment. Something extends mercy one more day. And perhaps, just perhaps, June 25th is that extended day. That final reprieve. That last breath before the great wind. The Virgin's heart burns for her children, not with despair but with hope. She believes it is still possible. She believes there is still time. She believes there are still souls who listen. And that is why she speaks. That is why she calls. That is why even when many mock, she remains. Firm, serene, maternal, like the only one who never gives up, even when everyone else has already given up. Like the last lamp lit when the world grows dark. And while that lamp still shines, there are those who are awakening, just in time for what is about to be revealed, because the awakening of a few can be the beginning of an invisible chain that transforms the destiny of many. It's as if heaven were waiting for that small remnant, scattered throughout the world, to say yes, a complete, radical, unconditional yes. And then, as happened in other times of darkness, the intervention from on high will begin. Not as a spectacle, not as a Hollywood event, but as a profound current that runs through souls, transforming them and preparing them to resist. Because what is coming is not just a global crisis, it is a crisis of the soul. A purification that will go beyond the visible and shake the internal structures we have built on the sand of this century. Our Lady in Medjugorje has tirelessly repeated that we live in a time of grace. But that time is not eternal. Grace is like the light of dawn, gentle, silent, but also brief. If it is not seized, it fades. And after it, the day will come, with its strength, its heat, its judgment. Therefore, those who have truly understood the message do not expect spectacular signs or apocalyptic revelations. They know that the greatest miracle is daily conversion, that the greatest sign is to return to God without waiting for the earth to tremble, because the secrets of Medjugorje are not designed to convince the world. They are meant to confirm those who have already believed. They are the final voice that closes a cycle, the echo of a warning that lasted more than 4 decades. And yet human beings need signs. And Our Lady, in her infinite pedagogy, has promised a visible, permanent, indestructible sign, which will remain on Mount Podbrdo, the site of the first apparition. It will be a sign for unbelievers, a light that will confirm that she was really there. But it will also be a sign that will come too late for easy conversion, because it is not a reward, but a confirmation, a seal, it was already said, now it is done. The visionaries have affirmed that when this sign appears, many will prostrate themselves, weep, believe, but they will also understand that they did not respond in time, and that, more than punishment, will be pain. The pain of having had the opportunity and having spurned it. For this reason, Our Lady insists, do not wait for the sign, convert now. This phrase is one of the most repeated in her messages, because she knows that true conversion is not born of fear, but of love. Not of external trembling, but of inner shuddering. Not of spectacle, but of the silence of the soul. And if there is one thing she has come to restore, it is precisely this: the ability to listen amidst the noise, the ability to believe without seeing, the ability to love without guarantees, because this is the faith that moves the heart of God. Many wonder what the 10 secrets Our Lady gave to the visionaries contain. We don't know exactly. Only 3 of them have been revealed as warnings to the world, one as a visible sign, and the rest as events that will profoundly mark humanity. One of the visionaries once said that if people knew what the secrets contained, they would immediately change their lives. But it's not about sowing fear, it's about preparing the heart, because God's judgment will not be like that of the world. It will not come with blind fury, but with a justice that springs from love. And that judgment begins with each soul. Before it reaches the outside world, it will touch the inner temple of each of us. And here, the urgency becomes personal, because it's not just about waiting for what will happen in the world. It's about looking at what is already happening within us. How is our faith? What place have we placed God in our lives? How much time do we dedicate to what is eternal versus what is temporary? Our Lady said it clearly: you have built the world without God, and you are walking toward perdition. These are not symbolic words. They are an accurate diagnosis of the spiritual illness of our generation. And the medicine will not be collective. It will be individual, one by one, soul by soul. Because heaven doesn't save masses, it saves hearts. That is why in each apparition, she does not speak to the world in general, but to my dear children. That language is the secret. It is what gives meaning to everything. Because we are not numbers, we are not statistics, we are not just another generation. We are children, and if we are children, we have a mother, and if we have a mother, we are not alone. Even if everything falls apart, even if days of darkness, confusion, and trial come, even if the world seems to be lost, whoever is with her will not be lost, because Our Lady does not abandon her own. She fights, intercedes, guides, protects. And when the hour of secrets arrives, it will be precisely her children who will know how to stand when others fall for not having believed before. Some believe the secrets are far away. That much is still missing, that these messages are only for the devout, but the signs of the times scream otherwise. Wars, divisions, violence, the loss of moral sense, doctrinal confusion within the church itself, everything is aligned as never before. as if the stage were being prepared for something greater, as if the curtain were about to open. And the actors will not be chosen from among the powerful, but from among the silent faithful, those who prayed when no one else prayed, those who fasted when others mocked, those who believed without having seen. And it is in them that history will find its backbone, because God doesn't need multitudes to act. A willing heart is enough, and if there are several, so much the better, because light, when united, can illuminate even the darkest night. And perhaps that is what is about to happen, a new Pentecost, an outpouring of grace, a final call before the great fulfillment. We don't know for sure, but what we do know is that Our Lady doesn't just talk. And if she keeps coming to Medjugorje, if she keeps calling, if she keeps crying, it is because there is still hope. And that hope is not a feeling. It is a person. It is Christ. And this entire path leads us to Him through the heart of the Mother. Because this entire path that Our Lady has traced with maternal patience points to nothing but Christ. Medjugorje is not an end in itself. It is a bridge, a school of the soul, a meeting place where Mary takes the little ones, the broken, the confused by the hand, and leads them back to the only one who can save them, her Son. And that is perhaps the deepest and least understood message of these apparitions. Because while many are distracted by the external details, the dates, the secrets, the signs, she continues to speak to the heart, not to satisfy human curiosity, but to awaken a living relationship with the Savior, a relationship that transforms life from within. The Virgin did not come to feed fear. She came to prepare, to form, to teach. That is why she repeats the same thing with such tenderness. Pray with your heart, because it is not the quantity of words that opens the heavens, but the sincerity with which they are spoken. To pray with the heart is to stop reciting and begin to love. It is to enter that inner space where the soul speaks without masks, where everything becomes true, where God listens, because at last man dares to speak to Him truly. It is there that conversion is born. In that secret corner of the Spirit where the noise of the world fades and only the voice of the Father remains. And if there's one thing that has marked Medjugorje from the beginning, it's that ability to silence the soul in order to listen. Just walk through its hills, along the stone paths that lead to the crosses, to feel as if you've entered another dimension. The testimonies are countless, people who arrived empty, broken, skeptical, and found themselves crying without knowing why. Because there, in that heavenly silence, something happens. There are no formulas, there are no techniques, there is only presence. A presence that envelops, that heals, that touches what no one else could touch. And that presence is that of Mary, who gently draws us toward God's embrace. Every June 25th, Medjugorje relives its first heartbeat. It is the anniversary of that moment when the supernatural became present in everyday life. And every year, the message of that day carries a special meaning. Some say it's like the spiritual report of the world, a summary of humanity's status before God. And if one looks at the messages of recent years, one word is repeated more than ever: urgency. These are no longer just advice. These are firm, clear calls, with a seriousness that cannot be hidden. The world has chosen death, he said in one of his messages, and you, my children, be those who choose life. But how do we choose life in a world that celebrates confusion, lies, and self-indulgence? How do we maintain faith when everything around us invites lukewarmness or the total abandonment of God? Our Lady has said it clearly. With the rosary in our hand and our heart in the Eucharist, there is no other way. These are the two pillars that will sustain those who spiritually survive what is coming. The rosary is not just a repetitive prayer, it is a sword, a chain that binds the enemy, a breeze that purifies the soul. And the Eucharist is not just a symbol, It is the living God himself who gives himself as nourishment to strengthen us when our human strength fails. This is where the true apostles of this time are forged. She calls them thus, apostles of my love. They are not the best, nor the most prepared, nor the most intelligent. They are those who say yes, those who allow themselves to be molded, those who don't feel worthy but still trust, those who cry and fall but get up and continue, because they know they are not alone, because they know that this time is not for spectators but for available souls. And to them, Mary addresses herself with words that burn like fire. I need you. I need your hands, your hearts, your prayers. The Queen of Heaven, asking her children for help. What other sign do we need to understand the gravity of this moment? While the world runs after new things, trends, and instant pleasures, the Virgin speaks in secret. Her voice doesn't fill headlines. She doesn't compete on social media. She doesn't impose itself stridently. But she is constant, faithful, powerful, and she touches hearts one by one. Like the good sower who knows that, even if many seeds are lost, it only takes one to fall on good soil for the whole story to change. And that seed today may be falling into your soul, not to scare you, not to pressure you, but to invite you, because God doesn't force, he proposes, he waits, and then acts. This is the time of the silent ones, of those who pray in the night without being seen, of those who offer sacrifices without acknowledgement, of those who forgive without receiving apologies, of those who love without being reciprocated, of those who trust when all seems lost. They are Mary's army. They carry no weapons. They hold no positions. They make no noise. But they are everywhere. And from the secret place of their souls, they are holding up the world. They are the invisible pillars that prevent the darkness from advancing any faster. And perhaps because of them, the secrets have not yet been fulfilled. Perhaps thanks to them, we still have time. And if all this resonates within you, if you feel that something in these words speaks directly to you, don't ignore it. Because it's no coincidence. It's a call. It's the echo of a voice that knows your history, your wounds, your fears, and yet it says to you, come. Because there is still a way. Because there is still room in God's heart. Because the final call has not yet been pronounced, but it is very close. And only those with an open heart will hear it without fear. And while the world spiritually sleeps, there are those who are already awakening, because the day is closer than it seems, because awakening is not only opening the eyes, but also learning to see with the soul. And that is what the Virgin has come to bring about since that distant 1981. A profound inner awakening that restores to humanity the capacity to see the invisible. The darkness spreading over the world is not a lack of external light, but rather a lack of spiritual vision. The sense of sin, the value of sacrifice, and the greatness of purity have been lost. The fear of God has fallen asleep, and the self has been exalted above all divine law. And it is precisely there that Mary makes herself present, like a beacon that does not accuse, but rather gently shows the way back. That return, however, is not automatic. It requires a decision, and that decision is the one every soul is called to make in this time. To whom does your heart belong? What occupies the center of your life? Where is your hope? You cannot live for God and at the same time serve the world. You cannot pray with your lips while your soul remains closed. That is why she has not come to ask for external religiosity, but rather a transformation from the roots. She has come to purify, to prepare, to form true hearts. Because the time of the lukewarm is ending, and what is coming will require steadfastness. June 25th, 2025 may seem to many just another date on the Marian calendar, but for those who observe with the eyes of the soul, it is a key spiritual season, for there are cycles that are fulfilled and doors that open or close according to the response of God's people. What if this were the last anniversary before the fulfillment of the secrets? What if it were the last great warning before the silence? Biblical history is full of similar moments. Noah built the ark for years while people laughed. Lot was led out of Sodom when no one imagined the end. The prophets cried out while being rejected. What if today we were living our own prophetic chapter? Our Lady has not left us without instructions. On the contrary, she has been as detailed as a mother preparing her children before a dangerous journey. She has taught us to pray with our hearts, to fast twice a week, to confess monthly, to read the Bible every day, and to live the Eucharist as the center of our lives. These are not optional tips, they are conditions for spiritual survival, because when the storm comes, and it will, there will be no safer refuge than a heart of grace. There will be no food more necessary than the bread of heaven. There will be no shield more powerful than the rosary prayed with faith. And this is where the message of Medjugorje intertwines with the messages of other apparitions approved by the Church, such as Fatima, La Salette, Akita, and Garabandal. In all of them, heaven has insisted on the same warning. If the world does not convert, very difficult trials will come, not as revenge, but as a consequence of our choices. And in all of them, Our Lady has offered the same refuge, her Immaculate Heart, a spiritual place where the soul can find peace, strength, and clarity. No matter what happens outside, if one dwells within that heart, one will not be defeated. But entering there requires renunciation, it requires humility, it requires opening our hands and letting go of what does not come from God. And that is the greatest obstacle, because we are tied to the material, to the immediate, to the superficial. We have been taught to fear pain and to flee from sacrifice, but the path of the gospel is narrow, the gate is narrow, and the cross cannot be avoided. Yet it is precisely in that cross, accepted with love, that the secret of victory is hidden. And Mary knows it. That is why in so many messages she has not promised comfort, but strength. She has not offered human solutions, but supernatural grace. She has not promised to avoid trials, but to accompany us through them. The modern world despises all of this. It speaks of self-help, empowerment, effortless success, but the soul thirsts for something more. It hungers for the eternal, and when it finally faces the truth of its smallness, only then does it open itself to the true God. Not the one who adapts to our preferences, but the one who transforms everything from the root. That is the God Our Lady presents to us. Not a decorative one, not an inherited tradition, but a living God who saves, who judges, who loves with fire. And if we accept that fire, even though it burns, it also purifies. Many accounts of conversion in Medjugorje share the same experience. The moment when the soul feels naked before God, as if it can no longer hide anything, as if all masks are broken. And that is where true spiritual life begins. Not in appearance, but in truth. And that truth, even if it hurts, is what can save us. Therefore, what is coming in the secret should not be seen as a punishment, but as spiritual surgery on a global scale. Something the world needs, but only a few are willing to receive. And perhaps that's why Our Lady keeps coming, because there is still hope. Because there is still time, because there are still children who, upon listening, do not close their hearts, and she knows it. And she clings to them, and she forms them like a silent army that is about to be activated. Not with violence, not with words, but with light, with holiness, with living faith. They will be the ones who, when everything grows dark, will light small lamps everywhere, not to be seen but to guide, not to shine but to point the way to the only one who can save, Christ. And perhaps on this approaching June 25th, heaven will speak again with force. But only those who have already tuned their ears will be able to recognize the Mother's voice amidst so much noise in the world, because recognizing a mother's voice amidst the noise of the world is an act of intimacy, not of noise. It is as if the soul, in its most silent core, knows it is being called, and this inner certainty comes not from logic or theological knowledge, but from a kind of eternal memory that is activated only when heaven touches the depths. This is what is happening to thousands of souls who, without understanding why, begin to weep upon hearing talk of Medjugorje, as if the soul were remembering something the body had forgotten, as if the spirit, upon hearing Mary's words, were awakening from a long slumber. These tears aren't emotional, they're spiritual, they're the language of the eternal that seeps into the human, because when Our Lady calls, she doesn't appeal to the intellect, but to the heart. And the heart responds with truth, not always with words, not always with visible actions, but with an inner stirring that changes everything. That's why each of Mary's messages in Medjugorje is like a drop falling on a stone. It may seem small, weak, almost imperceptible, but over time it transforms the stone, it erodes it, it softens it, it turns it into fertile soil, and that is her strategy: insistent, constant, faithful love. This love, however, is not naive. Our Lady is not ignorant of the state of the world. She sees it with a clarity we cannot imagine. She knows of our wars, our injustices, our moral failings. She knows of the confusion that reigns even within the Church. But her gaze is not one of condemnation, but of profound sorrow, because she knows that we were created for eternity, yet we live as if everything ends here. We are distracted by the ephemeral. We invest our souls in passing pleasures and leave God as a last resort. And that is why her messages have become firmer, more direct, more urgent, not to frighten, but because time no longer allows for beating around the bush. June 25th, 2025, thus appears as a spiritual line, a boundary between expectation and fulfillment. Not because there is a date revealed among the secrets, but because heaven seems to be aligning the times with divine precision, as if that day were a prophetic bell that will mark the rhythm of what is to come. Some feel that the soul is entering the final stages of a great celestial movement. Others, that we are witnessing the end of a period of warnings and the beginning of another where everything said will begin to be fulfilled before the eyes of the world. But these aren't sensational predictions. Our Lady has said that we should not focus on the when, but on the how we are living. Because when the time comes, it won't matter whether we knew the date or not. What will matter is the state of our soul. What will matter is whether we were faithful in the small things, whether we loved in silence, whether we resisted the temptation of lukewarmness. That's why this call is so personal. Because it's not about observing the signs from heaven as spectators, but about allowing ourselves to be touched by them as protagonists of God's plan. Every soul counts. Every response counts. Every yes given in secret tips the balance. And it is precisely in secret that the true battle is fought. Not on grand stages, not at mass events, but in the solitude of the heart, where no one sees, but where God contemplates everything. Our Lady knows that this generation will be judged not so much for its public scandals, but for its silent indifference, for having had light and scorned it, for having received so much and given back so little. That is why she insists so much on prayer from the heart, because it is the only way to break down that invisible wall that sin has built between man and God. Many today wonder how to live this preparation concretely. The answer is not complex, but it does require determination. It is about returning to the essential. It is about making space in the day for silence, for adoration, for sincere confession. It is about fasting, not only from food, but from distractions, superficialities, and empty words. It is about learning to look at others with the compassion with which Mary looks at us. It is about stopping running aimlessly and beginning to walk with purpose. It is about moving from a faith of habit to a living faith that burns like fire even in the darkness. This is the time for the little ones, for those who have no platforms or microphones, but whose hearts are ablaze, for those who shine not for their talent, but for their humility, for those who do not seek prominence, but to serve. Because in the logic of heaven, the last shall be first. And the Virgin has come precisely to seek out those last, to give them a place in history, to make them instruments of peace in a time of war, lit lamps on moonless nights, messengers of love in the midst of so much hatred. And all this is not a theory, it is happening. A new spiritual people is being born in the midst of chaos, and that people bears a seal, total belonging to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. Not as a superficial devotion, but as a profound commitment. As a refuge, yes, but also as a mission, because whoever enters that heart does not remain asleep. They are sent to console, to intercede, to resist, to be the presence of God where everyone believes he is no longer. And that is what the world needs now, not new discourses, but living witnesses, not activism, but holiness. Perhaps that's why the Virgin hasn't stopped speaking, because she knows that her army is still forming, that there are still hearts to win, that there is still time short but real to respond, and that June 25th is still on the horizon. One more opportunity, one last word, a new promise that may come wrapped in tears but laden with salvation. And for those who have already begun to listen, it won't be a surprise. It will be a confirmation. It will be the day when everything sown in secret begins to bear fruit. And when that happens, the world will remember that there was a voice that warned them with love and that never stopped calling. Because that voice didn't shout, didn't impose itself, didn't threaten. It only whispered from heaven for more than 40 years. And it was that whisper that managed to penetrate walls of indifference, restore faith to broken hearts, and break spiritual chains that had been squeezing the soul for decades. Medjugorje didn't become a pilgrimage center because of human organization, but because in its essence there is something that burns without being consumed. It is the silent presence of a mother who, without needing to prove anything, transforms everything. And precisely that is what is about to touch a new dimension. As June 25th, 2025 approaches, something in the hearts of those who have followed this story from the beginning begins to beat more strongly. Not because of fear, but because of awareness. The awareness that the time of grace is not eternal. The awareness that mercy always precedes judgment. The awareness that we have been warned not once, but dozens of times, and each time with greater clarity. Our Lady has not changed her message. She has intensified it. Like someone who knows the train is already reaching its final station and some have yet to board. And on that train, there is no room for pride, no room for masks, no room for half-truths. Only the soul that has decided to trust, even if it doesn't understand everything, can enter. The soul that has stopped looking for signs and has begun to live them. Because the great sign of this time is not a visible miracle, it is inner change. It is the peace that comes where there was once anguish. It is daily fidelity, difficult forgiveness, silent fasting, the rosary prayed with tears. It is that anonymous heroism that springs from hearts that have been touched by Mary's gaze. And those hearts are the ones that will sustain the world when its structures tremble. Many still wonder if something big will truly happen on June 25th. But that question reveals that we're still looking for the spectacular, the immediate, something that shakes us from the outside. And heaven operates differently. Sometimes the greatest manifestation is invisible. Sometimes the most powerful happens without cameras, without witnesses, without headlines. Perhaps on that day, something is activated spiritually. A seal, a decision, a silent movement of God that will only be understood with time. like a seed that falls and dies underground and only much later blooms. But whoever has been attentive will know that something has begun, and that is where we are called to live awake. Like the wise virgins of the gospel who kept their lamps lit while the others slept. They didn't know when the bridegroom would come, but they didn't stop waiting. They didn't lose faith in the night. They didn't despair during the delay, because they knew that the important thing wasn't when, but how they were waiting. And that is what Our Lady tells us today. Be ready, not to flee, not to hide, but to receive with love whatever comes, with the certainty that if God allows it, it is for the good of our souls. Prophecies are not announced punishments. They are gifts of warning. They are proof that heaven cares about us. What mother doesn't warn her child when she sees him walking toward danger? What true love remains silent when it knows time is running out? The Virgin has done everything possible. She has spoken through her visionaries, moved hearts on every continent, shed tears, repeated her message thousands of times. And yet, most continue walking as if nothing happened. But she doesn't give up, because a mother's love is not measured by the response she receives, but by the fidelity she maintains, even in indifference. And that's why Medjugorje has become the last beacon, not because it's more important than other apparitions, but because it remains active. Because heaven hasn't yet closed that door, but with each passing day the intensity increases, and those who have been there confirm it. Something has changed. The glances, the tears, the testimonies, everything seems more urgent, as if the soul knows there's no more time to waste, as if the silence of the world were merely the prelude to God's movement. And when God moves, nothing remains the same. In the midst of this scenario, those who have responded to the call are being molded. Not to escape the world, but to be in it without being devoured by it. They are trained in patience, in perseverance, in steadfast love, for the test will not be just of events, but of faith. And when it comes, it will not ask how much you knew, but how much you believed. It will not demand theological knowledge, but a simple answer. Did you trust? Were you faithful? Did you pray when no one else did? Did you hope even when it seemed all was lost? And that fidelity isn't something improvised. It's built day by day. That's why this time is vital, not only to prepare, but to consolidate the roots. Because when the winds rage, only those who are deeply rooted will remain standing. And those roots are invisible. They don't impress, they don't receive applause, but they are what sustain us. And the Virgin, like a good gardener of souls, knows this. That's why she continues to sow. That's why, even when the ground seems dry, she trusts, because she knows that the rain will come, and that everything sown in silence will flourish in its time. That's why there's no room for fear, there's room for hope, but an active hope, one that prays, that loves, that surrenders. Not a hope that waits seated, but one that walks with its eyes on heaven and its hands on earth, because this call is not for the perfect, but for those available. It's not for the strong, but for those who allow themselves to be strengthened. And if you're reading these words, perhaps you are one of them. Perhaps your soul has been chosen to hold a part of the world that has not yet broken. And if so, fear not, because Mary goes with you. And where she is, all of heaven is. And while the world continues to move aimlessly forward, there are those who have already begun to walk in the direction indicated by the mother's heart, because walking in the direction of the mother's heart doesn't mean having all the answers, but rather having made the most important choice, not turning back. And that decision, however small it may seem, is the breaking point between those who survive spiritually and those who are lost in the chaos. Our Lady repeated this insistently in Medjugorje. Satan is strong and desires to destroy not only human life, but also nature and the planet on which you live. This is not a symbolic phrase. It is a direct warning about the times we live in. The battle is not only cultural, political, or ideological, it is spiritual, and it is reaching its most critical point. Therefore, the question is no longer what will happen, but where will I be when it happens? Not physically, but spiritually. Because the visionaries have been clear, the secrets will come, and no one will be able to stop them. They will be, in their words, events that will change the world. Some will be difficult, others will be signs of conversion, but all will have one goal: to awaken. To shake humanity out of its lethargy, to push it toward a definitive choice. And although we don't know the dates, we do know the condition: to be prepared. Because those who have heard the call before will live it in peace. But those who refuse to listen will fear. Medjugorje is not an apocalyptic spectacle. It is a training ground for the soul. There, Our Lady has revealed not only what is to come, but how to resist it, not with human power, but with supernatural humility. Because the approaching times cannot be faced with logic, planning, or strength, only with inner purity, with obedience, with firm faith. And that faith is what she has come to sow in hearts that the world had already discarded, because often those who have been scorned by men are the most precious to God. Preparation, then, is daily. It is choosing the good when no one is looking. It is renouncing sin even when it hurts. It is closing the doors to every form of darkness, no matter how small. Because when the secrets begin to unfold, the difference will not be in how much you knew, but in how deeply you responded to God's love. Our Lady is calling us not to survive, but to remain in grace. Because whoever is in grace, even in the midst of the storm, will be sustained. And that will be key: grace. Not merit, not human works, not empty devotions, but the grace to live as children of God. That grace is nourished in the Eucharist, purified in confession, and strengthened in the prayer of the Rosary. Our Lady is not inventing new formulas. She is reminding us of what has always been the center of the gospel. And she does so with a tenderness that disarms, with a patience that humbles, with a constancy that challenges, because she knows that most people don't listen at first. But she also knows that there are hearts that, even if they take their time, will respond. June 25th, 2025 will not be magical in and of itself. It will be if heaven decides to act in a special way. And if it does, it will be to confirm that everything said was true, not to provoke fear, but to enlighten. And those who have faithfully lived these years of preparation will see that day as the arrival of a long-awaited friend. But those who lived in ignorance, denial, and mockery may feel the ground opening beneath their feet. Not because God wants to punish, but because the light will reveal what was previously hidden in shadows. And perhaps on that day, many will rush to Medjugorje. They will seek the sign. They will seek the visionaries. They will seek the answers they refused to accept when they were given in whispers. But Our Lady has been clear. Do not wait for the moment of secrets to convert. Then it will be too late. Not because there is no more mercy, but because the human heart, hardened by years of indifference, will hardly be touched by a single blow, even if it comes from heaven. Therefore, the call remains today, now, in this instant, when these words reach your soul. There is no time to waste. No excuses are valid. There is no sin that cannot be forgiven if one surrenders with sincerity. And there is no wound that the Virgin cannot heal if one allows oneself to be embraced. Because that is her greatest desire, to reunite her children before the pain, to cover them with her mantle before the storm arrives, to guide them to the ark before the doors close. Not out of fear, but out of love. And that love is what has sustained us all this time. It is what has made the Queen of Peace come down to earth month after month, year after year, to repeat the same message, because she does not tire, she does not abandon, she is not offended by our coldness. She only waits. She waits for that yes that changes everything. That moment when the soul, no matter how far away it has been, turns and says, "Mother, I am ready." And when that happens, all of heaven is set in motion. Because one soul returning is enough to ignite a new hope. And perhaps that is what June 25th, 2025 will bring. Not a physical earthquake, not a spectacular vision, but a silent movement of thousands of souls who in different parts of the world will say yes at the same time. Like a choral whisper rising to heaven, like a delayed but sincere response, like a second chance that heaven grants before judgment. Because God does not want the death of the sinner, but rather that they convert and live. And Mary, as a mother, will do everything in her power to make that happen. And if you are reading this, it is because perhaps your soul was one of those chosen to be part of that invisible movement that sustains the world from within. Because if these words have reached us here, it is not by chance. Perhaps this is not just one more story among so many that are forgotten. Perhaps for you, it is the story that arrived just in time, because there are moments in life when the soul knows that something is being decided in the invisible. And this is one of them. June 25th, 2025 is not a date you should fear. It is a date you should embrace with the eyes of your soul open. Because if what has been announced for more than 4 decades in Medjugorje is about to be fulfilled, then we are facing one of the holiest, most delicate, and most decisive moments in the entire spiritual history of humanity. There will be no more room for half conversions. There will be no more space for waiting a little longer. The mother has spoken, she has wept, she has insisted, she has pleaded as only a mother can. And yet many continue waiting for an external sign, ignoring that the greatest sign is happening within them, the restlessness that doesn't pass, the call that doesn't fade, the whisper that becomes impossible to ignore. If your soul is trembling right now, it's because heaven is touching you, and it won't be for much longer. Because the times of the world are shortening, and God's times are beginning to manifest in full light. The Virgin Mary didn't come to create one more devotion. She came to point out an urgency. She came to prepare a generation. She came to summon her children to the final spiritual battle. And no, it's not symbolic language. It's a real call to those who are willing to live as a light in the midst of darkness, like torches in the coming night. If you're reading this, you were called, you were sought, you were found, not by merit, not by virtue, only because God's love is greater than your failings. And that love has placed a spark in your soul that now burns. Do not extinguish it. June 25th may be the day the world remains the same on the outside, but never again on the inside. It may be the day heaven decides to move a piece, activate a secret, reveal a sign. But beyond what happens outside, the most important thing is what happens inside you. Because if that day comes with your soul asleep, you won't see it, you won't understand it, you won't receive it. But if it comes and you are in prayer, in grace, with the rosary in hand and a clean heart, you will be among those who will see the invisible, among those who will understand the profound meaning of this hour. Perhaps history doesn't remember our names. Perhaps we don't appear in any book, but heaven does see us, and it is seeking souls like yours to sustain the balance of all that is about to happen. Do not underestimate the power of a single sincere confession. Do not underestimate the value of a single Mass lived with an awakened soul. Do not underestimate the impact of a tearful rosary recited in the silence of your room, because there, in the hidden where no one applauds, the destinies of entire nations are being defined. Thus has the Virgin Mary said it. Thus has she shown it with her constant presence. There is no longer time to procrastinate. There is no longer room to negotiate with sin. You can no longer live as if you hadn't been warned. Because now you know, now you have heard, now you have been reached, and with that comes a responsibility to respond. Will you do it? Are you willing to stop waiting for later for what your soul needs today? Are you willing to be part of this invisible army that fights not with weapons, but with purity, with fidelity, with truth? If your answer is yes, then prepare yourself, because Our Lady will take you by the hand. And where she leads, nothing is lost, nothing is broken, everything is transformed. She doesn't promise easy days, she promises to be there, and that's enough. Her presence is a shield, her voice is a lamp, her gaze is a refuge. Don't fear what's coming. Fear not being ready, because what is about to begin is not the end of the world, but the end of a period of blindness, of rebellion, of indifference. It is the beginning of awakening. And only those who have believed without seeing will experience it. Those will be the ones who, upon hearing the signal, will not flee, but will stand up. They will be the ones who enlighten others, the ones who support those who fall, the ones who remind the world that a mother never abandons her children, and when that day comes, it won't matter how many times you failed. All that matters is that you were willing, that you got back up, that you trusted, that you said yes when everything seemed dark, that yes is the key that opens all doors. It's the word that transforms destiny. It's the seed that will save your soul and the souls of many. Today is the moment. This is the time. This is your calling. If you felt this story spoke directly to your heart, write in the comments, "I hear the Virgin's last call," and share it with 3 people who need to return to God, because perhaps their souls depend on you. It is no coincidence that this June 25th marks the 44th anniversary of the first apparition. The number 44 in the Bible is associated with the fulfillment of divine judgments. The flood lasted 40 days and 40 nights. Jesus spent 40 days in the desert, and the number 4, repeated, suggests something firm, definitive, sealed. In prophetic language, time is not linear, but symbolic. Every number, every date, every message contains a spiritual dimension that can only be understood through faith. What if this is the time heaven has been waiting to act? What if the world, deaf for decades, has finally crossed the line that triggers justice after so much mercy? Some will say that all this is exaggeration, that nothing will happen, that there have always been prophecies and nothing has been fulfilled. But the curious thing is that many of the messages given in Medjugorje have indeed come true. The fall of communism, the war in the Balkans, the rise of apostasy, natural disasters, and the loss of the sense of sin were announced years in advance. And each of these messages was received by the visionaries with a pain that cannot be feigned. They don't seek fame. Many of them have led discreet lives, far from the media, but faithful to the daily call of Our Lady. What do they know that we don't see? Every 25th of the month, Our Lady delivers a public message through one of the visionaries, Maria. But June 25th is different. It's the date on which, according to many believers, heaven renews its commitment to humanity. Some experience it as a prophetic renewal, others as a warning that grows more urgent each year. In 2024, June's message was, "This world has no future without God." A simple but terrifying phrase. Because if there is no future without God, what have we turned our present into? And if the world continues as it is, what can come after so much spiritual deafness? The question then is no longer whether the Virgin Mary is still speaking. The question is, who is truly listening? Who has stopped to consider the state of the human soul? Wars, moral confusion, ideologies that destroy innocence, divided families, empty temples, hidden sacrileges. You don't have to be a mystic to see that we are walking toward the abyss. And meanwhile, a mother continues to appear, not to condemn, not to control, but to plead, to warn, to guide, as if to say, it is not yet too late. but it will soon be. And so, we return to June 25th, 2025. Will it be just another date? Or will it be the visible beginning of something that has been brewing in the invisible for years? Some pilgrims have begun to say that this year something will change, that there will be a sign, that one of the secrets will be revealed. There are no certainties, but there are signs. And those who are attentive, those who pray, those who fast, those who remain faithful, feel that heaven is preparing something. Not a catastrophe by revenge, but a movement of grace so strong that many will not know how to react. Some will be broken, others will be converted, but no one will remain indifferent. And as that date approaches, like a silent wave, the human heart needs to return to the beginning of everything, to the place where this mystery began, to a small village among the hills, where 6 children heard the first whisper of what may be the Virgin's last call to the world. And it was there, among stones, fear and silence, that something began that has yet to end.